All right, great. So first we're gonna talk about the stages of genocide. So my first question to you is, what is the first stage of genocide?
The first stage of genocide is, of course, to demonize the target group, to make them sort of the enemy not only of the state, but also the enemy of the chosen people. And the chosen people in the Ottoman Empire, of course, were the Turks. And the people that were supposed to be demonized were the Christians. The Greeks were the first ones to be targeted.
How was that evident regarding the Greek genocide?
The first things they started to do actually began in 1912. People were giving speeches in the Pontus area, saying that all of this that you see, brothers, the houses, the land, the businesses, this all belonged to you. And the Gior, the infidels, came and took it away from you. And we must make it yours again. Well, of course, that was the complete opposite, because the Greeks were there for thousands of years before the first Turkish tribes invaded. And it belonged to the Greeks and the other Christians and some of the other inhabitants of Asia Minor. And it was the Turks that came and took it away. But that was one way of riling up the people. And since most of the Turkish people at the time were uneducated, the government never educated their people, this was the way of inciting people. They had no idea of their own history at that time. So that was one method. The other method was what George Horton said. He was the U.S. Consul General in Smyrna. He said that all of a sudden there were newspaper articles in the papers, obviously generated by the Young Turk government, demonizing the Greeks. And also they spliced together images very crudely, showing that the Greeks were like killing Turkish babies, Muslim babies, and ripping open the stomachs of Turkish women, of Muslim women. And they posted them in schools and mosques in order to incite the public to turn on the Greeks. So this was a way of making the Greeks sort of the other, and sort of aliens, and inciting the Turkish public to hate them.
My next question is, describe the stage of genocide called dehumanization.
Well, that was one of the ways that they just dehumanized the Christian populations, starting with the Greeks, is to make them, to say that they had come and stolen your property, that they were murderers and thieves. And this was the way to show that they were different than the Turkish population, and that they were kind of invaders in a way, so that they became the target group, and they became someone to be reviled, because they were hurting the chosen group, which were the Turks.
It was a question of, how she would characterize it, but she basically, I think, explained it, so it doesn't even, we're scratching that out. We're moving forward. Okay. So the next question is, can the final stages of genocide happen quickly as violence increases?
Killing 3 million people takes quite a while. And it depends on whether the government is afraid of public opinion from the world or whether they don't care. In the case of Rwanda, for instance, almost 1 million Tutsis were killed in less than 4 months because they didn't really care that the rest of the world was watching. In the case of the Ottomans, they did care about world opinion to some extent, and therefore they used special forces that they can claim were doing it against their own will, against the government will. They can sort of disassociate themselves. So they used special forces to begin the killing process. They also used labor camps. They inducted a lot of the men into labor camps and sent them to the front to be killed during World War I. The labor camps was a great way of killing the Greek inhabitants, and later they extended that to the Assyrians and Armenians. And that was by starving them to death or leaving them in the cold, And so many thousands died of exposure, of starvation, or illness. And that had a dual purpose. And the dual purpose was to leave the women and children and the elderly without their menfolk to take care of them.